G'day NASPSPA virtual conference attendees. Thank you for your interest in this presentation. This particular study was taken from a larger international study exploring social capital and well-being among first-year students, which is led by my colleague Insa Bacchus. The focus of this presentation will look at physical activity and depression alongside social capital. So I'd like to take some time to thank my colleagues Katja and Insa for their support in developing this project. So we know that poor mental health is prevalent, with as high as 51% of university students considered having poor mental health. For this study, we will explore two factors that may relate to students' mental health. The first is physical activity, which is typically considered a protective factor for depressive symptoms. The second is social capital, which includes two kind of components to it. The first is their social network, so the size or the amount of resources embedded is considered the behavioral dimension of social capital, as well as their perceptions of that social environment, including trust and social cohesion, is considered the cognitive dimension of social capital. Now, social capital in general has been related to mental health and students' mental health. However, research has yet to examine these three constructs concurrently. When examined together, it may be that physical activity or social capital will predict mental health more than the other variable. As such, the purpose of this study was to explore the relationships between first-year university students' social capital, physical activity, and mental health. For this study, we recruited 322 first-year university students attending UniSA, or the University of South Australia. Majority of participants were female, with an average age of just under 20 years. Participants completed an online survey approximately 8 weeks into their first semester of study, and it measured aspects of their social capital, physical activity, and depressive symptoms. In terms of results, from their scores on the depression measure, majority of participants presented with clinically relevant depressive symptoms. They also reported moderate to high levels of stress at that 8-week mark. We used multiple linear regressions to examine relationships between the variables, or predictive relationships. For depressive symptoms, first, we found that the behavioral dimension of social capital was a negative predictor, so a predictive factor of depressive symptoms. However, physical activity was not significantly related to depressive symptoms. We then also predicted social capital, and we found both depressive symptoms and physical activity were related to social capital, and specifically the behavioral dimension. So the results present two main considerations for discussion. The first is that the more physically active a student was, they also perceived having a greater social network to rely on. This is not surprising. If you think about exercising or playing sport, a lot of the times you might be doing this in groups, and so therefore you're likely to perceive having greater networks than those who are less active or not active. So the resources available to these individuals increases the more one exercises. We also found that the cognitive dimension was not so physical activity was not related to the cognitive dimension of social capital. So feelings of trust and social cohesion not related to physical activity engagement. Social capital was also related to depressive symptoms. This is the second consideration, in that this contradicts a large body of research that indicates physical activity is associated with reduced depressive symptoms. So what we might think is that physical activity, because it was positively related to social capital, it may be that social capital here is acting as a mediator to reducing depressive symptoms. However, as this was a cross-sectional study, we cannot determine whether mediation exists. So further longitudinal studies are